It's time for the Dog and Pauly podcast on FingerLakes1.com, featuring Harold Webb Dog Weber and Paul Hellstrom.
Well, it is a Wednesday, leap year 2012, February 29th, 2012, and you are listening live to the Dog and
Pauly Show.
And we certainly welcome you as we have a little snow coming down. They're talking about a couple inches of snow, nothing real serious. It's been a mild winter. But without further ado, you know, we always enjoy having special guests join us via the telephone or coming in live. And a longtime buddy of mine, a Seneca Falls guy, our state senator, who's been working diligently to try to figure out what's going on down there in Albany. We welcome in my friend Mike Nozzolio. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Harold. Great to be with you. And hi, Paul. How are you today?
Doing very well, Mike. Thanks for coming aboard.
My pleasure.
Well, Mike, you certainly are, no doubt, up to your ears in issues involving being a legislator down in Albany. Give us an update of what you're working on right now before we get to some questions.
The primary engine that drives state government is the budget. And Harold, Paul, that's what we're doing right now. The budget is being analyzed. The governor proposes, and then the legislature has to dispose of and agree to. And we've been very fortunate over this last year, beginning with last year's budget, to have a partner in Governor Cuomo in that 99% of what he is proposing, it's what's we partnered with. And by we, I mean the Senate Republicans, of which I'm a member. We're the majority party in the Senate. And that what we try to do is to push our state ahead. And we've gone through some rocky economic times. I don't need to tell you gentlemen what it's on the minds of everyone, and that's if you have a job, are we going to keep the job? If you don't have a job, how are you going to get a job? And that's the overwhelming sentiment of every one of my constituents in terms of their concern with the future of our state, the economy of our state. So the budget drives those proposals, and I think New York, because of the tough medicine we took last year, cutting spending for because it was needed without raising taxes, we pushed together a budget that I think last year did what had to be done. It wasn't pretty, it was painful for some, but it was the prescription that was necessary. This year, for the second time in a row, which will be the very first time in our state's history, for 2 times in a row, that the state budget will be less this year than the year before.
Wow.
And by cutting spending, it makes us more competitive with other states. And then I think that that's the overriding objective, and that's what everyone is talking about in the Capitol as we are now about 30 days out from the budget being the deadline, which is the 1st of April, the 31st of this month. I guess we're still in February, so it's the 31st of March.
Right.
And it's great to be with you guys on a leap year. This only happens once every 4 years, so I guess I'm going to remember this for at least the next 4 years.
You listen, Mike, I've been trying to follow some of the state news. I watch Capitol tonight most every night when I'm home, and I noticed that the governor is coming out with an issue that I'm certainly you're informed on as well, and that, of course, is pension reform. We're trying to introduce a new pension program. He's pretty serious about getting the legislators to go along with this. Give me your comments about that. He's basically saying he wants every legislator to vote on this and to be accountable for his or her decision. What's your take on that? I was kind of curious about he's obviously fighting for a new pension reform.
I believe it's something that's going to have to happen, but it has to be done in an appropriate way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the big debates that's going to take place over the next few days, that whether the governor's proposal will be accepted intact in total, or will there be some modifications. I think either way, there has to be reform at the end of the day, and that's a big debate that's going to take place over the next few days and probably weeks, that we can't see the spiraling costs to local communities, to the property taxpayer, for the types of pensions that have been existing in the past. They just can't continue in the future. It's unsustainable. It's not what everybody wants to hear, But the fact is, it's what everyone has to do. Is those employees now coming into state service, not in the local service, those that are working for property tax supported entities like schools and like towns and villages and counties. That you have to have a sustainable model, something that's going to not break the taxpayers' back and push forward. And that I think for new employees coming into the system, there's going to have to be some sort of new pension process that is not as costly to the individual property taxpayer.
No doubt. Mike, certainly there's nobody that's not more up to date on the Cayuga Indian Nation and all the issues involving, and I think you and me talked a year or so ago, and you being a lawyer made the comment that the lawyers and the courts are the busiest people in the world regarding the number of issues involving. As far as the Seneca County Board of Supervisors and the Indian Affairs Committee, I know they're working, Mike, to try to set up bus tours here in the Seneca County area relative to showing the people, seeing is believing, as you know, Mike, showing people the number of parcels that have been purchased by the Indians, the Cayuga Indian Nation. Do you agree with that? Do you like that idea? And are you planning on, if you can get back to town, to take one of those tours, or maybe you already have done that?
No, Harold, I think it's great that people become educated into the dynamics and what has happened to particularly Seneca Falls as a result of the Indians having that monopoly, the unfair advantage of selling their products, and they've tried to put through every possible loophole they could put through to sell their tobacco products and gasoline without paying their fair taxes. That has led to an enrichment to the Cayuga Indians that's really unfair. And that enrichment then has led to them acquiring properties, and the unfairness is compounded by their acquiring the properties and then failing to pay the property taxes. That this is not a reservation.
Right.
It has not been designated to be a reservation by the federal government. The Indians are flaunting that system right now by refusing to pay their fair share and refusing to pay their property taxes. That if they acquire land, the land just automatically is not to be placed in trust. The federal government has actually sidestepped the issue and has not required this to be an Indian reservation. So I think that it's important for people to understand, A, that the Indians are acquiring land, B, they're taking it off the tax rolls that hurts everyone, and C, they're doing it in a way that's illegal. And that is being contested in the federal courts. It's been in the federal courts in Rochester and in New York City for the last at least 18 months, and that it's an issue that the courts are, with glacier melting speed, taking their time in reviewing this matter, while and I think taking too much time, frankly, while the citizens of Cayuga and particularly Seneca counties are holding the tab. Harold, I was, as you know, I'm very proud of my heritage. I was born in Seneca Falls, raised in Seneca Falls, educated in Seneca Falls. My dad's first job as an Italian immigrant coming to Seneca Falls was milking the cows at the former Sioux and Dairy, which was actually at the site of the former Seneca Knit factory, which is now has been for many years Gould's Pumps and is just now a new iteration. That property is where my dad first worked, and that's where the Sioux family sold some of that land that existed right to it would be to the east and north of that factory off East Barrett Street Extension, and have continued to buy parcels through the corridor and into from basically East Barrett Street, Stevenson Street, east to the lake. And I applaud everyone that takes a tour. I travel that. I know that. I know every parcel in that area, and I'm encouraging my colleagues at the state level, at the national level, at the local level, to understand the dynamics. And it's tough for people in Waterloo or Ovid or Junius to understand that there is this problem, let alone further outside. So I think it's great that people are taking or will take the time to show individuals what's exactly there.
I had somebody ask me the other night, they had 3 issues, and they wanted me to pose the question to you as far as importance, and maybe they're all important to you, and I'm sure they are, but if you could rank them in your mind, and that the 3 items that were brought up was potential mining at Seneca Metals, the land claim approval, which of course you're very much involved in, and of course potential hydrofracking, which of course makes the news, Mike, every night. How would you rank those 3 areas of concern? Do they sit with you on an equal basis as percent-wise, or does one of those 3 stand out more than the other 2?
I think that certainly the Cayuga Indian matter is foremost in my mind because of its potential economic devastation. But all 3 of those are very important issues. Let's take them one at a time. And before we leave the Cayugas, if you will,
sure.
I want to share with Harold and Paul just a letter that myself and Assemblyman Brian Kolb and Assemblyman Gary Finch have co-authored, and we signed it and got it out to Senator Schumer this last week. That Senator Schumer has, I'm sorry, that I'm pulling it out in front here, that it's a letter to Senator Schumer that we want to make sure that he and our other federal representatives, Senator Gillibrand, who copied her, and Congressman Hanna, we copied him, that this letter is basically in response to some very good research done by Dick Talcott. And I know, Harold, you know Dick,
sure.
That what we've got here is the federal government and the president, in putting his budget, basically tried to circumvent what's called a Carcieri case, and that did so in a way that was basically kind of hiding it, and that basically trying to change the dynamics that are out there, the law that's out there in terms of allowing the eligibility of establishment of trust lands for certain Indian organizations. And that what we see is it's a violation, I believe, of the intent of Congress in establishing law. The Obama administration is trying to basically say that all that land that we talked about can be immediately dumped into trust status. I think that's as simple as I can describe it without getting into the major technicalities of it. The bottom line is the budget that the President of the United States put forward for the Congress to consider now is a budget that has in it hidden a clause that basically would create a trust situation immediately for the Cayuga Indians, and that land would be automatically off the tax rolls.
Well, certainly, Mike, nobody, and certainly, Paul, if you want to chime in, too, or the question here, talking to Mike Nozzolio, State Senator, here on the Dog and Pauly podcast on a leap year Wednesday, the 29th of February. You know, certainly, Mike, as you point out, for that land to go in trust, being a Seneca Falls guy all of my life, as you know, and the fact is that I just can't imagine the word devastation, how that would possibly be outdone by any other word that I can think of. And I just... if the day ever comes, I don't know, Left Town won't be back. I'm not sure how anybody could respond or react or even survive such a ruling.
That's exactly how we believe. And Harold, Paul, what's even worse is that the federal government now is trying to change the rules. Mm-hmm. And the Obama administration is trying to basically hide it in the back door of their budget proposal. And that's why we've got to, and I've alerted Senator Schumer to this concern. We all need to address this to our federal representatives, Richard Hanna, Kristen Gillibrand, Senator Schumer, Chuck Schumer, to get them to focus on this issue and get this out of the budget, because it would be a total green light for the Cayugas to be able to take that land virtually immediately and put it into trust. So that's something we need to continue to focus on, and I know sometimes. And Harold, you actually recognized this in one of your letters to me and to the newspaper, that the fact of the matter is most of these issues are decided at the federal level, dealing with Indians, and that's something that is frustrating to me because I certainly believe that we did everything right as a state for many years, and that now we had the governor actually collect sales tax this last year. I think that close to $50 to $100 million was collected, but the fact is every law has a way around it, and that's what the Indians are basically doing now with the sales tax issue. Let's move forward to the other two issues that
Sure.
you mentioned, hydrofracking.
Right.
That's a very important issue that we all need to consider. I have taken a very strident position against hydrofracking in the watershed under the regulations that are currently proposed. Those regulations, I believe, do not protect the Finger Lakes watershed sufficiently. That there should be a zone of protection around them. And what really galled me was that the regulations, as proposed by the DEC, provide certain status to Skinny Atlas Lake. Actually put a zone of protection against hydrofracking around Skinny Atlas Lake, but don't do that for the rest of the Finger Lakes. I think Cayuga Lake is just as good as Skinny Atlas Lake. It needs just as many protections as Skinny Atlas Lake, as does Seneca, as
Agreed.
does Wasco, as does Otsego, and every other lake in the 11-lake system. And that watershed needs to be protected. Gas is great. We've got a lot of potential for establishing natural gas in other areas of the state and nation, but the fact is we have a more important resource than gas to protect and to nurture, and that is water. You can live without natural gas. You can't live without water.
Right.
And that the Finger Lakes have the most beautiful aquifer in the world, frankly. To take the greater Oswego River Basin, as it's called, from the southern Finger Lakes into Lake Ontario, that watershed needs to be protected. You and I get our drinking water from that watershed. It is a major source of recreation. It is a major source of tourism. It is a major source of every business in our region, including the wineries, the over 100 wineries that exist in the Finger Lakes region. We need to protect that watershed, and that the regulations as pro-offered by the DEC don't do that sufficiently. And that's why right now I don't think the fracking should proceed without those regulations changing dramatically.
And, of course, the comment you want to make on the mining at Seneca Metals?
Again, that's an issue that I believe should be decided by the town of Waterloo.
Okay.
That where that mining permit is requested. Like hydrofracking, I've got a legislation proposed that the towns have a say in the hydrofracking process. I think this should be a local decision that's decided by the local citizenry, by their local community elected officials, working with the citizenry to decide what's in the best interest of each community, whether it be Waterloo, whether it be another community for hydrofracking. That I think it should be a local option, and I'm pushing legislation now to establish that ability for a local decision making by on the hydrofracking front. It already exists on those other zoning issues and mining issues like confronted by Waterloo.
Well, Mike, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about an issue that's close to my family's heart. You were kind enough to come to the Matt Foe benefit up in Geneva. We appreciate you taking time out. We talked at the time. We lost Matt, our son-in-law, at the age of 40 with brain cancer, being a volunteer fireman. And as you know, you're working on some legislation with Brian relative to the types of coverage, the different cancers that are covered. I believe it's 10 for paid firemen versus lung cancer, 1 for the volunteer. And you have been, I think you introduced legislation regarding the fairness doctrine of allowing volunteers and paid if they go into a burning home, as you pointed out in your interview on the Rochester channels. Give us an update where you stand. Is it something that you feel good about? Is it something that maybe your colleagues could embrace? Obviously, we lost Matt at the age of 40, and Samantha's hanging in there good, and the family's trying to do the best they can. But give us a little update on that situation. We do appreciate you getting involved in it.
Well, Harold, please, again, my deepest sympathies for the loss of your son-in-law, and that Samantha and the kids, please give them my best.
Thank you.
I want our listeners to know that your son-in-law was the type of individual I consider a genuine American hero. And that's every person who decides when the fire bell rings, they're going to leave the comforts of home and go out and try to protect people and property from danger.
Right.
That's what real heroes are, and that's what Matt was.
Mm-hmm.
And that as Matt had an issue that he came to me many, many months ago and asked for assistance about a year ago,
Sure.
asked for assistance in establishing equity to give those who are volunteer firefighters the same types of considerations when injured in job-related injuries than regular firefighters have. Those are paid, and those who are in those paid firefighting positions.
Sure.
Under the law that exists already for volunteers, it's not setting up a new category. It's simply saying that that category should be identical.
Mm-hmm.
In areas like cancer and like those neurological diseases that often are the result of chemical exposure, and that the types of chemicals that you're exposed to are the houses are no longer built out of just wood.
Right.
September 11th showed that buildings are built with many, many different elements that have a chemical reaction when they are burned. And that reaction can create danger, and it can create the type of disease that is potentially there. And that's why we introduced Senate Bill 4004-A.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bill that we believe will eliminate this inequity, will eliminate the types of different criteria or status of one type of firefighter versus another. It's the same fire regardless of who has to be submitted to that, exposed to that fire.
Yep.
And we put this on our priority list. Assemblyman Culp has put it on his priority list, and we hope that it will gather the support necessary to get it through both the Assembly and the Senate and signed by the governor.
Well, certainly we appreciate whatever you can do. I know that Matt is in heaven looking down at us, but I know that Matt is probably up there in heaven wondering he would like his fellow colleagues, both men and women that are volunteers, to get that type of coverage, even though he's not here. But he's here in spirit, obviously. So, Mike, we appreciate from our family all that you've done in trying to get this working, and I know that the process that you face down in Albany is not something you snap your fingers and get things done, but we certainly would appreciate, and I know you will give us your consideration to stay on top of it, as you got a million things you're working on.
And we need everybody to help us. We want to get more support out there for the measure. That we are trying to get the fire associations to be fully supportive of this,
Sure.
particularly the Volunteer Association.
Right.
And thank you again. In Matt's memory, we are going to fight very hard for this measure. I don't know how much time we have remaining, but if I could just...
Sure, you got about... I was going to keep you for like 30 minutes. I know you're busy. We got about 5 to 7 minutes. Go right ahead.
I'd like to just mention something that
Sure.
We tend to lose sight of in our area, and it has made me very, very happy over these past few months to think about our region. Particularly when I have to deal with problems all the time, you think, is there ever a light at the end of the tunnel? When people are struggling day in, day out to get by, I know that's a concern every family has. But we also need to look at the bright side. And when I talked to Jimmy Senecropi just before we got on, and Jim's been a great friend for many years with me, and he sparked something in my head that I've been thinking about for a long time, and that's how great a region we have. And Harold and Paul, you guys deal with sports.
Sure.
I love sports.
I know.
I wasn't the best of athletes, but I was certainly the most, how should I say, enthusiastic of athletes. And to have the opportunities to play sports for Minders and then on to Cornell, I think it's something that I treasure as experiences. And being part of the Wayne Finger Lakes League is something that, you kind of say, we're out here in the more rural areas.
Right.
We got cities like Geneva, but mostly it's small towns like
Right.
Waterloo, Seneca Falls, Clyde, even Newark, and going through the Finger Lakes Lions, and that Penyan. We have these communities that are salt-of-the-earth type communities. And to think that those communities and that Wayne Finger Lakes athletics in particular have created many fine leaders, but in the terms of sports, to have Tom Coughlin as a product of Waterloo lead his New York Football Giants into the Super Bowl for the second time and win the Super Bowl for the second time, and then have Jim Boeheim from Lions establishing, as he has, a record of leadership and is certainly one of the finest, if not the finest, basketball coach in the history of the game,
right,
the collegiate level. Here are two individuals who grew up right around the same time we did, Harold.
That's a good point. Yep.
And that I'm just so proud of the fact that these two men are representative, emblematic of the Finger Lakes region, the Wayne Finger Lakes region, and that isn't it great to have this conference? This is not just Section 5. This is the Wayne Finger Lakes League. To have these two great sports icons, basically graduates of our own hometown schools. And I remember Tom Coughlin, my dad, when our recreation was Dad taking me to either see a Miners football game or a Waterloo football game.
You're right.
And I remember Tom Coughlin. I remember seeing him score touchdowns. I also remember Jim Boeheim playing at Seneca Falls.
Sure.
And, of course, we all followed Tom Coughlin into his Syracuse University heydays. But to have these two gentlemen from our hometowns be at where they are, I hope it gives everyone a great sense of pride.
I think it has something to do, as we get ready to wrap it up, Mike. I know you're busy. I think it has something to do with the line that couldn't be truer. A local boy makes good.
We got a couple of real good reasons to be proud. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you, gentlemen, today. And thank you for your great work. And thank you for keeping issues alive and the great forum. And Harold, my mother-in-law loves listening to you, and I'm sure she's listening right now.
Well, listen, before you go, I can't let you go without a comment about the Republican primaries. Now, Mike, they've been beating each other up every night, every day for months. How do you slide on this? Are you staying neutral? Is it Romney, Santorum? What's going on out there? Romney got by Michigan last night, and it was closer than everyone expected. So what's your take on that primary?
There's far too much that you can't turn around without being heavily analyzed by the media, and I think that's
amazing.
That's the kind of thing that's just part of the process today. I think that, frankly, though, this election is going to be extremely important. We cannot continue the national policies that exist and that are being forged by the administration today. This Indian policy is just one of many hundreds of policies that are destroying our economy, and that I think that we absolutely need a different course in America, and that's the efforts that I'm going to put my attention to. All
right, Mike. Well, listen, Miners Academy, your alma mater and mine and Jimmy's, playing Wellsville tonight, semifinal Section 5 basketball. I know you wish them the best of luck.
And I sure do, and it's great to be with you today.
All right, Mike. Thanks a lot for spending a half an hour with us. Mike Nozzolio from Albany here on the Dog and Pauly podcast. We thank the Senator for taking time out of his busy schedule, answering some of the issues, some of the questions that we were posing. We certainly hope that you enjoyed him joining us here, because we all know, with all due respect, we make fun sometimes of politicians about they make all this money, they don't do a lot of work. Well, they're pretty busy down at Albany, as you can imagine, working on the budget, Pauly. And it was good to have Mike on, and certainly well-spoken as normal. I had some pretty good insight on several of the issues.
Yeah, he certainly did. He moved on from issue to issue, and he did the best he could to cover them off. Two things I'd like to add to it is I'd like to thank Mike on a state level. A word that I thought should be eliminated from the political system, bipartisan, was brought in the last couple of years. It seems like the Democrats and the Republicans are actually trying to get together and make the best out of a bad situation. And like Mike said, it took some cuts last year and some more cuts this year to do it. But it seems to be that they've brought common sense and bipartisan to the table. And I'm just hoping that the federal government can do the same thing with these locked-in type of things that Mike was talking about on the land trusts. And I hope that all comes out in the open so the people will know where they stand on what politicians and can make the decision are right. And another thing I like to comment on what Mike said was, I just want to mention the two names that he mentioned, Coach Coughlin and Coach Boeheim. Those guys never strayed far from their roots.
Right.
I mean, they're total success, but they brought the Wayne Finger Lakes to their programs. And people say, well, Coach Coughlin, he's changed a lot. He had to calm down. Basically, he's the same Irish Catholic kid he was in Waterloo. He's taken it to that level, and he throws his clipboard down, and he doesn't like to lose, and he's gotten people to buy into it. And Jim, of course, is a legend at Syracuse, and he
yeah.
still can be seen in lines shooting. He's never forgot where he came from, and that's to be honored. And the fact that Mike, with his noticed that with all the things that he's got going for him, was very well.
Hey, by the way, we spent 30 minutes talking to the center. We better get to our sponsors, or we'll be without sponsors. By the way, just so you know, we'll talk about it at the end of the show. Next week, we bring in Brad Jones, my good friend, who was on the Indian Affairs Committee. We're working with the Seneca Board of Supervisors, Seneca County Board of Supervisors. I think it was his idea, or I'm sure he came up with the idea or worked with other people to come up with the idea of doing tours, bus tours, that check out the various parcels of land that have been purchased by the Cayuga Indian Nation. Brad will be in along with Mitch Rowe, who is county manager. Mitch just took this job recently. I read a nice story about him in the Finger Lakes Times. They did an extensive interview on Mitch. He seems like a nice guy. The only problem I have with him, Paul, he's a Bills fan. I don't know. You got to forgive some people for some things. I'll be curious to meet Mitch personally next week, but my God, how can you follow the Bills? 12 years without a playoff. Mitch, come on. You work too hard for Seneca County. You got to pick on another team or something. I'll get a chance to meet him next week, and we'll pick on him on the air. But Brad will be in along with Mitch talking about the plans, what the educational process is going to be like. Jimmy Senecrope, the owner of Finger Lakes One, is going to be doing some work on a virtual tour. A lot of things are going to be happening. Brad will lay it out as he always does. He's very on top of his game. I don't want to blow up his head too much this morning, but I'm sure they'll be prepared. They'll be here next week for the full hour talking about the upcoming tours involving the parcels, land, and et cetera, that have been purchased by the Cayuga. Obviously, the impact of all the land purchases and the taxation or not taxation of these properties is monumental to Seneca County, one way or the other. So Brad, no doubt, will be in talking about that, and we look forward to meeting Mitch Rowe as well. So, Pauly, let's talk about sponsors that pay for this show. We'll needle Dick Marshall in a minute, but let's go to Deluxe, and I'm sure you're still cranking up there, and Charlie's still in a good mood, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, we're still, like everybody else, we keep looking out the window, waiting for the winter weather to come, and it hasn't. So Charlie says, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. He said he's never seen so many people around at this time of year on the weeknights coming in. It just happens to be, we can't blame it on the weather, so people are getting out. And sometimes they can't come in maybe and eat, and they'll stop in and hang around at the bar for a while, have some popcorn, have a couple of drinks, watch some television, watch some games, maybe have an appetizer or so and slip out. And that's what's great about the Deluxe. I mean, you can go in there and you can get just about whatever you want, plus a kind word, which is unusual. Charlie's one of the easiest going guys I've ever met.
He is.
And he's really happy with the situation. We've had the best January and February that we've had in 3 or 4 years, and that's amazing in itself. But we're just going along, and we're not going to change anything because it's working. So the half portions are going huge since we mentioned it and opened the doors up. There are some more people coming in now, and when they get the turkey and the chicken biscuit and the specials and the deep fried ramen, the pork chop, they're getting half portions. Find out that they get totally full and fed, and the price is very accommodating, and they can still have time to go out and have money to maybe go see a movie after going to a restaurant. You had to make a decision in the old days. I'm going out to eat tonight, or we're going to a movie, because you know what those concessions at the movie theaters can get.
Oh, baby,
you walk in and you fight for your matinee or your senior discount at the door and spend twice as much for popcorn and a cola. So you can come in and get somebody to weigh on you. L.A. Esther's waiting for you, and for $1 more at dinner, you can get waited on and laughed at and fun picked at and everything. So Deluxe is rolling along.
Well, that's great, and we thank Charlie and certainly the whole organization up there for sponsorship of our Dog and Pauly podcast. And again, we thank Senator Mike Nozzolio for spending 30 minutes with us this morning. My buddy Scotty Trickler, I had a chance to have breakfast with Scott yesterday. We're good buddies. He's also a sponsor of our show. Some big deals coming up this weekend at Lizard's Tailgater Lounge up in Waterloo. Of course, on Friday night, March the 2nd, it'll be the DILF Band returns with special guest Low Flying Planes and others to be announced. And on Saturday, they're going to do an 80s night party with DJ Hancock and karaoke. You wear your 80s garb. I know, Paul, you got some of that. A home, along with Helen's, no doubt can tell you where it's at. So you can wear your 80s attire, sport your mullet, and win some prizes. Shake your booty to some 80s dance music and enter the big hair air guitar contest. They're going to have 80s prices, too, from 10 to 1. Now, that upsets me because Scott knows I go to bed at 9:30, but he's going to have the 80 specials prices at 10 to 1, $1.50 Coors Lights and Keystone cans, Jack and Coke, only $2 1/4, $1.50 Coors Light draft, and 50-cent slices of pizza. How can you beat that? This coming weekend at my buddy Scott Trickler Lizard's Tailgater Lounge, a fine sponsor of our show. And, I had a chance to talk to the defeated one, Dickie Marshall, Pauly, and he's still in a good mood, as he always is. I got to tell you that Dick's a class guy, and if Dick's listening to his show that he sponsors, I want to remind him that we are circling a date, him and his good friend Ted Flock, on the 14th of March, 9 o'clock, March 14th, 9 o'clock. If Dickie can get away from the business and Ted Flock can get away from pennies from having 4 hours of coffee, if they would make a presentation to come in here and hand over brand new $5 bills to moi, as I can give you an update on the Danica Patrick bet. 20 laps in. She didn't cause the accident. It was one of the many, 28 crashes the other night at Daytona? She was one of the first ones. Jimmy Johnson was first, lap 2. Bang, smash, goodbye, Jimmy. But anyways, Danica got caught up in a crash. She did not cause the crash, but she got caught up in it. And I was yelling, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo. My wife thought I was crazy, which she does most of the time. She was in the other room in the kitchen. What are you laughing about? Well, that bet with Dickie Marshall and Ted Flock is over, baby. And then they panned the garage, and there is the 10 car, the green car. Go, Daddy, go. Sitting on a jack, and her helmet's on, and she's not a happy camper. Some 48 laps later, I think, Paul, she gets back on the track. So bad, so sorry, we're sorry. $5 my way from Dick Marshall and from Ted Flock. A total of $10, boys. So March 14th, we'll be bugging you about this to come down and make your presentation on the show that Dickie sponsors. We hope he sponsors after today since I've been picking on him. But all kidding aside, Dick's a class guy, and he's a good sport. I'm sure, and I want to tell Ted and Dick if there's any interest in making another wager. I don't hit and run, so let me know, boys. By the way, Marshall's Auto Service, I see auto sales. I see he's only got a couple of cars in the parking lot over at Marshall's Auto Sales. Last week, Pauly, you commented he had 6 or 7. Now it looks like he's got 2 or 3 there. 40 years in the business. Check out a beautiful car. Used cars, Dickie Marshall will make a good offer for you. If you don't like the price on the window, work out a negotiation with Dick. He's not going to give it away, but he'll work out a negotiated price with you to get a car for your mom, grandma, daughter, son, whatever. And I had a chance to talk to my longtime buddy who I haven't seen in a long time, Tommy Thompson, the other day when I called the Marshalls to see if Dick was around. Tommy, of course, their crack one mechanic, will take care of any issues involving the automobiles. So we thank Dickie Marshall, Marshall's Auto Sales, for sponsoring the Dog and Pauly podcast. Our final sponsor on the Dog and Pauly is the Seneca Falls Country Club. Hey, you know what? We're talking a month, baby. April 1st, the club officially opens. Whether or not we'll have beautiful playing conditions, you never know, but we've had an unbelievable winter so far. The Seneca Falls Country Club invites you to join up. I'll give you the details in a second, but anyways, if you would like to go down there and play and you're not a member, an 18-hole green fee, including a cart, is only $35. On the weekends, it's $39 before noon. You can play all day, including a cart, for 50 schmeckers. And a 9-hole green fee, including a cart, is $20. Cart rentals are very cheap, $15. You got range balls. And by the way, you probably have seen the coupons that are circulating the Finger Lakes region. If you were not a member in 2011, you could not be a member down there. They are offering you a $500 coupon off of the price. Obviously, it does not include the college student classification along with the high school student. But for a single with tax, it's $1,200 and some dollars. You can apply that $500 coupon. Your cost is a little over $7. Very, very reasonable. If you're a joint family membership, you're looking at around $1,700 or so. You apply that $500 coupon, you can have your family play for around $1,200. So it's very, very reasonable. It's an eye-catching offer by the Seneca Falls Country Club. If you would like to talk to Bob Fuller or contact somebody down at the Country Club, Bob, I'm sure, will be working in a feverish pace the next few weeks to get ready for his opening. Bob's, you can get a hold of Bob down there at 315-568-5202, or you can email, and the email address at the Seneca Falls Country Club is membership@SenecaFallsCountryClub.com. Membership@SenecaFallsCountryClub.com. Again, folks, you got everything in your handing it over to you, and it's an awesome deal. So I look forward to seeing you down there this year, and I look forward to have Bob Fuller, by the way. We're hoping to get Bob on either the 21st of March or the 28th to come in and talk about golf, the country club. He's got a new job. He's got some new staff, and he's going to tell you about everything that's going to be happening. Hey, Paul, before we go back to you and talk about some things involving the world of sports, talk about Waterloo losing a heartbreaker, the girls last night, want to send out a special hello to a guy that I used to hang out with a bunch of years ago, Anthony Madej. Now, Anthony Madej, when you talk about the top 10 legends in the area, he would be ranked about 9th. But Anthony Madej checks out our podcast and hopefully checks out on my video show on Mondays at 9:30. Live, Anthony. We want to say hi to Anthony Madej, a true legend, retired recently from Corning Glassworks. So thank you, Anthony, for letting us know you check out our show. And, of course, him and me were friends, and we still are. I just haven't seen him in a zillion years. So, Pauly, what else is on your radar? The girls of Waterloo have a great season with Mike Bree coaching. Unfortunately, we do not have the final score number, but we understand they lost by a single point, Heartbreak City.
Yeah, I heard that they lost last night. I don't have the score, the details on how they did. It doesn't matter. A 1-point loss at this level is brutal once you get to the semis or the sectionals. I think they might have played Wellsville or somebody like that. Their records were identical. They were both 17-3. On the plus side for the girls, I don't have to tell them. I'm sure many people have told them, keep your head up. You're a really, really young team. You got some super athletes, and you're really a sharing team. I made it to 7 or 8 girls' games this year, and they really distribute the ball, and they're really genuine happy for each other's success. And I think that Waterloo's going to make an impact on the scene in the future. And I want to congratulate the Minders boys going forward. They've got a game tonight in the semifinals, and I figure them to go all the way to the qualifier for the states. They're B, and I think Charlotte is double B, or maybe vice versa. That's probably who they'll have to play in that one. But going forward, go Minders. And then the David and Goliath story, you had mentioned it on your Monday show and everything. The cheerleaders of DeSales High School.
Oh, yeah, fabulous.
all 7 strong of them, you know.
Yep.
And you brought your friend in that day to the show here, and when I seen her energy and everything there, I said, wow, she's got 7 girls, and she's excited about the program. But, you got to start somewhere. They never had it for a lot of years. It was discontinued. They had cheerleaders when I was in school. That was BC.
Sure.
And then, but now the fact that they're back and that they scored well over 300 points they scored. And I look at some of those programs that have been going for years, like Mid Lakes, where they have 20-plus girls out there and another 20 standing by to go. They score in the high 3s, of course, but DeSales is definitely on a stepping stone. I think they'll have a bigger squad next year. I'd just like to say congratulations to the girls on getting the job done. And then, moving on away from local stuff, I would like to comment that David Letterman was on the other night. And
You stand for David Letterman?
No, but I caught the reruns of the show the next day. It was seen that reported that Reese Witherspoon was reported to be at the Yankees spring training.
Yeah.
And David Letterman commented that she might be a candidate to be Alex Rodriguez's girlfriend for the 2012 season, Kate Hudson in 210, Cameron Diaz in 211. And people are wondering why the guy's whiffing all the time. How would you keep your head on your shoulders? I mean, how are you going to play baseball with that? And speaking of that, someone said the way he's been going lately for the amount of money they invested him, he ought to come out with a male fragrance and call it Ode of Whiff. And but that's enough. I'm a Yankee fan, but boy, it's hard.
I know
they could get a lot of players for what they pay that guy. But anyway, that's that. And another thing I'd like to comment on this morning in the sports section is what. Poor UConn going from national champions.
Well, they're beating up on Calhoun.
I really like to take a stance and be aggressive with it like you would do. normally I wouldn't do this. I would just disagree with you.
Right.
I think they're caught in a bad situation with Calhoun.
Yep.
At this stage of his career. He's a young man. He's 70 years old. I hope he's young because he's three and a half years younger than me. But it seems like he's becoming a distraction to the team. Yeah. And I was talking to Jim beforehand. Even in the recruiting, it's got to really hurt to know that your coach isn't going to be there for all the practices, all the games, and everything like that. And I know he's in a class with his friend Jim Boeheim, and they always like to play against each other, and he's won a lot of games. But I really feel as if Connecticut this season ought to be an eye-opener for them. They ought to move forward and make a real tough decision, do something like in that aspect.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, a couple of things regarding Miners. Of course, they play tonight. The Blue Devils of Seneca Falls take on Wellsville. The game's at RIT. Games time 6:30. If the Blue Devils win, they would play the only game on Sunday at the Blue Cross Arena at noontime. So if they win, they would play at the Blue Cross Arena at noontime. By the way, we've had friends of mine and people stop me on the street asking me about, we had done 3 webcasts, and asking us why we weren't covering some of the sectional games. Let's clarify the point here, and Jim's here. First off, Section 5, Jim heard it from Section 5 personally, knows it uphand. We would love to continue to do the juggernaut of 3 games that we did. We'd like to add 3 or 4 more before the end of this year. A couple of issues involving Section 5 basketball games played in different gymnasiums like RIT or wherever that may be. Jim, update our listeners. The fact is that Section 5 has a problem because if you bring your cameras and show video and pictures, it may keep Paul Hellstrom and Helen home to watch it versus going to the game, thus affecting ticket prices. So could you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, there's short notice for, and by the way, thanks to Senator Nozzolio for calling in. That was a really interesting conversation. Not only he touched on every hot button issue.
That's great.
And then I really enjoyed the conversation about the Wayne Finger Lakes sports leagues and the type of leaders that have been produced out of there. But in terms of the webcast that we did, everybody got really excited because they were really good.
All there.
So we internally said, okay, well, let's keep an eye on sectionals and see what happens. And the way it works in sectionals is, after they play their first round games, it's a quick turnover, but you don't know the location that those games. So when it came out on Saturday that there would be a game Monday night at Waterloo, Dundee and Honeoye out of the Finger Lakes West, 2 teams that we've kept an eye on, especially on the Upstate Hoops podcast with Matt Verke here on Finger Lakes 1. I figured that would be a perfect game. So on Saturday, I called up AD Jeff Panic, told him we were interested in doing that after talking with you, Matt, and Jeremy Hunt to make sure that you guys were available. And Jeff said, that sounds great. And then he directed me to Joe Spazzato just to clear things up on the Section 5 front. And Joe called, I can't think of the guy's name, Phil.
Section 5, yeah.
Yeah, in Section 5. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name. And they told him no live images for sectional games, which was definitely disappointing. Now, maybe we could have negotiated for a fee, but with such a short lead time, we couldn't do that. And then previously, I had inquired about doing it at the Blue Cross Arena, and that was a $5,000.
$5,000
for live images out of there. Now, obviously, though, they're looking at television,
Sure.
But we're something different. A lot of people did watch, but I think that's a little exorbitant fee for us to pay to do a webcast.
I agree.
So we shut it down in terms of the basketball for the year. We could have gone to either and done just an audio broadcast, but as you mentioned when we discussed the possibility of doing that, you can't give someone filet mignon and then they come back and they get a hamburger.
That's right.
So that's it for this year for basketball webcasts, unfortunately. But what we will be doing is looking for opportunities to perhaps do a spring sport. Softball comes to mind, lacrosse. I actually have a contact at Hobart that I told them we'd be interested in maybe some of their events. And then coming into the summer next year, the New York State Women's Amateur is going to be at Seneca Falls Country Club. We're going to do a live broadcast from that 2-day event, and that's almost guaranteed. Looking into the possibilities of maybe bringing Newark Pilots baseball games.
Maybe a game of the week
a
format
game
type
of the
scenario.
week. Yeah, I actually have to meet with Bob Oman, the owner of that franchise, next week at the ballpark in Newark. And then heading into next fall, looking at some rivalry football games, maybe, possibly some soccer. But when we get to basketball season, you can bet we're going to lay out that whole season next week and probably do a game of the week from, Thanksgiving time through, the end of the regular season. And, we'd be willing to think, because we have such strong support from our sponsors, we'd be willing to, pay Section 5. It's just the short lead time nature of the way those locations are set. It wasn't enough time for us to really get into that and do that.
Now, clarify one thing. You mentioned pay Section 5. I thought it was an issue relative to them not letting us do it because it would take away attendance versus them coming to the game.
Well, it is, but it's $4 a ticket for these sectional games.
Right.
I went to see Minders play Bath Haverling in the first round.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to go get a chance to see them tonight at RIT, but $4 entry fee, of which I assume the Minders, the host school, gets some. So how many people are we talking here? 40 people. So 40 times $4 would be $160.
Okay.
Certainly, we'd be willing to pay $160 to do a sectional game. It's just, I think from Section 5's perspective, the whole idea of a video webcast is something new. They've dealt with radio and TV for years, and now all of a sudden there's this third entity that I don't think they necessarily might understand. And it's new to us, too. So, I love the live webcasts. It's exciting. It brings and the one disappointing thing, especially about not doing that Dundee Honeywell game, is that the kids, I think, lose out because they get to go home and watch that.
Yep.
But not only that, relatives and family across the country who don't get to see him play, get to tune in. So from that perspective, it's disappointing. I understand Section 5's perspective on it. But we're all learning, and certainly at Finger Lakes 1, we want to bring you more live sporting events via webcast. And not only sports, just kicking around ideas. You got the Muscle Man Triathlon in Geneva is a possibility for us to do a live remote. Empire Farm Days is another one I thought of. Wouldn't that be cool to set up out there and interview some of the vendors and organizers of that event while that's going on? So, it's endless, really.
It's endless, right. Well, I just wanted to get Jim to clarify that because I've had people ask me why we stopped the boat. We didn't stop the boat because we wanted to stop the boat. We have some issues. Certainly, if we were able to bring our act to the sectionals, we would have been at these facilities because, I've done this a long time back in my radio days, and there's no way that we would have stopped doing it. But I am agreeing with Jim, and I think, Paul, I need you to comment as well. Once you show, once you have, if you and Helen are checking out a game and you hear the audio and you're able to see your nephew on pictures, and then the following week we do a broadcast, a webcast, and we don't show the pictures, we just give you the audio. You may say that's acceptable, but a lot of people would say, to me, it's like from filet mignon, Paul, to a hamburger steak. It's not, you offer it and then you take part of it away.
Yeah, I think I think it was done the right way. I think that the basketball games that were brought got better each time.
Yep.
I think we left the people with a good taste in their mouth.
Exactly.
They're hungering for the flavor of more.
Right.
And rather than just throw out a product and just have it get muted,
I agree.
and it's quality time versus playing time, I think that Jim's got some great ideas.
Yep.
And I know Jim's kind of a perfectionist.
Oh, yeah.
If 1% of the broadcast is off, he considers it a failure. I consider 99 a good average. Not that you are. Maybe us added up together.
That's
but
right.
that would be that. So I just think that the direction it was handled well this year, and moving forward on all levels. Plus, mentioning that basketball might be the strength because it's indoors, it's bad weather season, and the people that couldn't go wouldn't go anyway. Maybe he says if 50 people are going to a sectional game, how many would go to a regular game? Unfortunately, the gyms don't look like they used to in the old days, but that's mostly should be taken care of by the students, I think. I think the whole student body should go to represent their teams. But that's that, and this is this. And I think moving forward that Finger Lakes 1 is going to be a huge part of bringing the local sports back again. Are we pretty much out of time, Harold?
No, we got a couple minutes. Go ahead. Go right ahead. Got some other hot topics?
There's a debacle going on that I know nothing about. I know nothing about.
Okay.
politics or anything like that, but I'm learning a little bit about state level versus federal and stuff like that. Women Hall of Fame cuts staff,
I know.
cuts hours.
I saw that, yeah.
Women Hall of Fame
I was shocked
cuts
at that.
staff, cuts hours. It took women almost 200 years to get recognized.
I know.
In some aspects, they're still not recognized properly. How can you downsize?
I thought of that when I read the article myself.
What do you mean I can go?
Yeah.
I got a rotary phone. Jim laughs every time he hears it. I don't want to go get it online. Well, if I come to Seneca Falls, I want to stand under the sign where a woman went out and said, I want to smoke here, I want to vote here. I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Read that
I know.
petition of sentiment on the wall
Yep.
that those women signed. 17 men signed that in 1848. How would you like to be at
I agree.
Bulls Run or Reds on a Friday night for happy hour if you were a guy in 1848 who signed a woman's petition for equal rights? You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
I go to Washington, D.C. I moved from the World War II monument. I moved to the Vietnam Wall, the Korean Wall. I moved to all of these places. There's not a penny involved.
Right.
Somebody's paying the expense for that.
Right.
It's got to be federal, right?
Right.
Well, women's rights, isn't that federal?
Nah,
or is it the responsible of Seneca County and Seneca Falls, New York,
Yep.
to pick up the payroll for it or something like that?
Executive
and the woman
director.
that made the decisions
Yeah.
that it's got to be shut down, is, in all due respect, is Beverly Ryder.
She's out in California.
Of Los Angeles, California. I don't have anything. I mean,
Hey, I got a lot
don't
to
know.
say about that, actually. It's,
I agree.
About
Terrible.
5 or 6 years ago, I was the chairman of the Seneca Falls Economic Development Committee, and so we came up with a little plan
Right.
for our future in terms of developing our economy here in Seneca Falls. And at that time, the Women's Hall of Fame had just purchased the knitting mill,
Right.
and they needed to raise about $25-30 million to renovate it and give that organization a proper home. And geez, I got to be careful what I say here because I get a little emotional sometimes thinking about this. We crafted our whole plan around that coming to fruition, and the fact that there's 50% of the population of the world are women. So number one, geez, it should be bigger than the Baseball Hall of Fame.
yeah.
It should be bigger than the Football Hall of Fame. And number two, the incredible inductees, incredible women inducted into this here in Seneca Falls. And so as part of that, there was a meeting of the National Board of the Women's Hall of Fame, and they all got together at the Seneca Falls Community Center, and they laid out this vision with architects' drawings of the Hall of Fame and the knitting mill when it was done. And I met Beverly, and I met everybody on the board, men and women from across the country. And that was the last time I've seen it of any of those individuals until recently when this latest news came out about the downsizing. Now, that could be a good thing. They're downsizing, and then they're going to try to, again, raise the funds necessary to move it over to the knitting mill. But it is disappointing because I know that people have come to Seneca
Right.
Falls to look at for the Hall of Fame
absolutely.
and the National Park Service. And I don't think that they go back to wherever they came from and tell other people that they should come. I think they're generally disappointed.
Right.
And they should be. Women's Hall of Fame, it's a disgrace that it's
Yep.
that small. And another issue I have with the Women's Hall of Fame, and again, it's an organization with so many people, so it's tough to just lay the blame on a person or one person. But one thing I never liked about it was, if you go to the induction ceremonies, they usually have them at NYCC, $7,500, $125 tickets, not black tie, but certainly a dressy affair, inaccessible to everyone. How about you pull out the bleachers in there and free admission or $2 admission, so the guy making $35,000 a year can bring his two daughters to see some of these great women speak.
It's a great idea.
And instead, it's inaccessible to those young girls who might be influenced most by seeing. When I was there, it was Julia Child's daughter spoke on her behalf. There was another woman who was inducted that year who was Native American and did a lot for women's Native American rights.
Sure.
I'm trying to think back to some of the other ones. Judy Pfeiffer of Seneca Falls, who is an astrophysicist, right from Seneca Falls, inducted in, who she is now getting involved on the board. And it's nice to have someone truly local who's not only an inductee. And then finally, I'll say this, Oprah Winfrey's in there. Hillary Rodham Clinton is in the Hall of Fame. And I'm looking from a fundraising perspective that certainly those people can be approached. What about Revlon or other
major
multinational corporations who produce products for women?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Revlon wing of actresses that were inducted into the heart. I'm just totally talking off the top of my head, but it's something that has to happen because what's happening now is there's movements elsewhere to have a museum in Washington, D.C. celebrating women's rights. And, from a Seneca Falls perspective, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people over the years have really fought hard to bring us to where we had gotten in terms of, remember Celebrate 98? When that was huge.
Sure.
And it seems like since then we haven't captured any momentum that was built there, and we've gone backwards. It was my Uncle Augie Sinacropi was a big part of it, going back 30 years of helping us become a national park. So it's very frustrating because the potential's there. We just can't seem to facilitate it. And part of the problem, I believe, is that we got a board of directors who are spread across the country who, again, I got to be careful, but not as proactive as they should be. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I did read the article, Paul. I agree with you. I kind of was shocked. Sat back in my chair saying, what? I mean, when I worked at the Clarence at the front desk as a front desk guy for about a year and a half, 7 out of 10 people arriving from Canada or whereabouts, different parts of the country, came to Seneca Falls, not specifically for the Hall of Fame, but they wanted to know at the front desk when it was open, the hours. They wanted to have their kids, their husband, and their grandmom, their mother, whatever. They wanted to tour the Hall of Fame. And now those people at the Clarence are going to have a harder time because the hours are going to be reduced. And to me, it's been the signature of Seneca Falls. Personally, I'm a guy, but I think it's one of the most dynamic thing to happen to our village, and people come specifically to see the hall. Now we're looking at getting rid of the executive director. We're reducing hours. To me, it's just a step backwards to me.
I think while you're waiting for the next big thing to happen and you don't know what it's going to be, Main Street, Seneca Falls, it's all tourism is now the fast approaching the number one industry for us in the area with the wineries and the people coming to the area. It's time when people start getting out of school and going on vacations.
Right.
This is when you limit it, and this is when you open it up.
Oh, yeah.
You volunteer. Did need some? I'll work 2 days, 4 or 5 hours a day.
I know.
The only thing I can hope is that it's one step back to take 3 forward. I think it's more of what they were doing wasn't working. They had a lot of overhead. So now they're kind of reorganizing, and like I say, take a step back and then move forward stronger. That's what I'm hoping is the case. And one more thing about that Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls in general. 1856 or 1856, I think, was the National Women's Rights Convention here in Seneca Falls. The whole country turned their eyes to Seneca Falls. Women across the country were inspired by what happened in Seneca Falls. I think that women globally, should still be able to turn to Seneca Falls. We think now in America, women's rights, what kind of issue is that? Women have reached equal status with men, in America, but that's not the case in Afghanistan. That's not the case in a lot of parts of Africa, even some parts in Europe, in the Middle East or in the Far East. Women's equality and women's rights is still an issue that I think on a global scale demands attention. And so for these people globally, with the internet and everything, the world's gotten so much smaller, to have an opportunity to turn to Seneca Falls for inspiration, are for guidance, are for support, is a big part of what Seneca Falls can do. And again, I love Seneca Falls, and I think about the impact Seneca Falls has had globally from, Gould's pumps.
Sure.
I mean, how many pumps or how many facilities across the globe have a Gould's pump?
Huge.
So we were stopped on the Underground Railroad. Seneca Falls, for a small town, has had a serious impact nationally and globally. And I don't see why that needs to stop now, especially from that women's rights perspective globally. So, that's my 2 cents on it. It's something I get a little emotional about.
Sure.
Well, I've put my 2 cents in 2 or 3 times, so now I'm going to put the nickel in. These women were visionaries way ahead of their time.
Right.
And they didn't consider taking anything for themselves when they left. They left something behind. And for us to let it go dormant or let it get into lull sessions or something, whatever it is. And Jim mentioned a couple of things. You get a couple of big names involved in something like that. You get an Oprah Winfrey or you get an Ellen DeGeneres. These people are shakers and bakers and movers. And boy, represent the women's movement as much as anybody probably did from those eras. And I just think we owe it to the women whose names there on that wall, the Anthonys and the Motts and these people to keep playing it forward. I mean, it's the most important issue to me there is in the world.
Okay, guys. By the way, we talk about Seneca Falls. We almost left off one important aspect. It's a Wonderful Life, too. Hey, I mean, God, that's what the signature is in the fall and the wintertime. Well, we've had a lengthy show as usual, but we certainly not too bad. Only 7-8 minutes later, past our 11 o'clock or noon time's ending. A reminder: please make note. Next week, Pauly will be off. We'll have Brad Jones and Mitch Rowe in to talk about the bus tours and the Cayuga Indian Nation situation as it relates to the county. Both Mitch and Brad will be our guests for the full hour. That'll be next Wednesday. Again, starting time, please make note, 9 a.m. We'll start at 9 to 10 versus the 11 to noon slot that we've enjoyed the last 8 months. So we are changing it up to an earlier time, starting at 9 a.m. And then, of course, on the 14th, we are sending out a personal invitation to Dickie Marshall and Ted Flock to make an appearance to pay off the Danica Patrick bet to yours truly, because my Social Security check will be a little late and I need their money. So, guys, it's always fun. Paul, thank you very much. And as usual, we want to thank the Senator, Mike Nozzolio, for spending 30 minutes with us. And go Minders Academy tonight. Go get them Blue Devils. And with that, we thank you very much for joining us here on the Dog and Pauly podcast. Once again, next Wednesday, new time, 9 a.m. Pauly, take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.